everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing an amazing dessert recipe, and it is a vegan carrot cake, and it's also gluten-free. Now the cake actually doesn't have any fats or any oils in it, so if you are on a health journey that is omitting fats or oils, this is totally a great recipe for you. The frosting does have some natural fats in it from the cashew nuts, but you can choose to omit it or not if you'd like. Anyway, stay tuned to see how we do this and get this done. First things first, let's preheat the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and then we'll get into the ingredients. Quick note that I wanted to make, this recipe is for a large cake. So if you wanted to do I think it's 9x5 little pans, then you will just split the recipe in half and you can do it that way. And the baking instructions are going to be a little bit different, but I'll leave those in at the end. Okay, so first off, I wanted to talk about these rolled oats. You can use any type of rolled oats, just make sure that they're gluten-free because sometimes they are created in facilities that have gluten and it could be cross-contaminated. So instead of just actually buying oat flour, I make the oat flour myself, and it's much cheaper and just easier to do it that way because sometimes it can be hard to find oat flour. So that's what we're gonna do, but you'll need 4 cups of that. I love this organic coconut palm sugar. We are going to use a cup of this. And then I have some carrots here that we're going to shred, and we need to make about 2 cups of shredded carrots. So we'll see how many carrots that's going to use, but definitely just get a bag of carrots, organic. And then we have 1 banana, a ripened banana. I have some ground cinnamon. We are going to be using 4 teaspoons of that. We will be using 1 cup of maple syrup. And if you don't have maple syrup, you can use another sweetener if you'd like. Like here's some date syrup I just happen to have so I can show you guys. Also, we're going to use 2 teaspoons of nutmeg, 1 teaspoon of pink Himalayan salt. And here's the optional for the frosting. So I have some walnuts that we'll be using to top off the cake, kind of for decoration and for a little crunch. And then we have our raw cashew pieces because we are gonna need those to make the frosting. Okay, so what you're gonna need is some parchment paper. I have a spatula here, 2 bowls, and then we'll need a grater. I just have a mixer here, and then I have 2 9x9 inch round pans. These are super old. I couldn't find the new ones, so we're gonna use these for now, and that's why we have parchment paper. We have our high-speed blender here, the Vitamix, which is what we are going to make the oat flour out of and also make the frosting with the cashew nuts. Just put 4 cups of rolled oats in here. We're gonna see how much that makes. That we have 2 bowls is because one is going to be for dry ingredients and one will be wet ingredients, and then we'll mix them together. And there it is. That actually made 4 cups perfectly, so that worked out. Next, we are going to do 4 teaspoons of cinnamon, and now we have our ground nutmeg. We're going to do 2 teaspoons of that. Then we have our pink Himalayan salt. Now, I have done this recipe with a little bit of baking powder before. Now, it makes it a little bit more drier. So if you're going for a very moist carrot cake, leave that out. So that's all for the dry ingredients. Now we're gonna move on to this bowl and use the wet ingredients. So even though this is a dry ingredient, we're gonna mix it in with the wet ingredients, and that is the coconut sugar. So this is 1 cup here. And then we have 1 cup of maple syrup. Drop that banana in there. 1 cup of water. I'm gonna use spring water. I'm going to be using this grater here, and I'll be using this side to grate the carrot. And I like to use the bigger side because if you use any smaller ones, or if you blend it down into like a mesh or a pulp, then what ends up happening is you can't really see it. It like blends in too much with the carrot cake. But with this one, you can actually see the little pieces of carrot in there, and I like that. Okay, so I sped this up, otherwise you guys would be sitting here with me shredding forever. But it takes about a total of 8 carrots for me to get 4 cups of shredded carrot. So it could vary with you, maybe like 7 to 9, depends on how big the carrots are, but that should be good enough. And you get the point. So I'm pretty much done shredding 2 cups here. So I'm getting the measuring cup, filling it in there and dropping it in the bowl. And we're gonna do it one more time. Except I'm not gonna show you guys in the video, you get the point. Okay, so you guys know how I had that banana in here. So I actually want to make sure that gets broken down. I should have did that before actually, but here it goes here. So I'm just gonna make sure that gets broken down into all the little pieces. So now that I have it all pretty much, oh, there's a few more spots there, but pretty much all blended and mixed up, I'm gonna let the carrots sit for about 5 minutes with the mixture. It brings out more of the moisture within the carrots. So we're gonna let that sit for a few minutes. Okay, so here we have the dry batter. I'm gonna mix that all together to make sure that all the cinnamon and nutmeg is mixed in with the sea salt and the oat flour, because you don't want it to be really clumpy or anything. You don't want there to be like clumps of oat stuck in the batter. So make sure you get that all mixed up. So that looks pretty good. And then we are going to get the wet batter and pour that in there. I'm gonna use a spatula. Okay, and then I am just going to mix it all together. Now, with this, I like to kind of flip it in there because a lot of the wet ingredients and dry ingredients are blended separately. So now I'm just going to mix it that way until all of the wet and dry ingredients are mixed in together. It smells so good. So you want to make sure there's no white clumps. Otherwise they will show up in the cake. So make sure it is thoroughly mixed. So now this is what the batter texture looks like. It's pretty thick, but it also is thin enough. Now we're just going to put them into the pans. Okay, so a quick tip about these pans or lining these pans with parchment paper is you get a piece of parchment paper that is around the same size as the pan. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna fold it in half, like this. And then you're gonna fold it one more time, in half again. And then what you're gonna do is, what I usually do is like hold it up to the pan here, and then you're gonna fold it down kind of like into a cone. Sorry, this is kind of hard to do. So, as you see, it's almost like it looks like a piece of pie. And so then what you're gonna do is just cut off the excess. I'm gonna cut right around there. So I've got some scissors here. So it's about right here. So now, if I open it up, you get like a perfect circle, and it fits perfectly in the pan, like that. And so when you put the batter in, obviously it'll sit fine. Yeah, isn't it easy? So I'm gonna do that for the other one too, but it's my favorite using parchment paper. I know growing up, I didn't even know what parchment paper was. But It's cool because it's easier for cleanup, and honestly, it's also really easy to get the cake out of the pan. That's my favorite part, because I remember being young and having to figure out how I was gonna get the cake out of the pan without letting it stick to the edges, instead of using tons of butter and oil and stuff like that just to make it work. So here they are both lined, and let's move on to the next step. Spatula just to make sure that it is flattened out on both of them. And you can even just kind of drop them to make sure that they're nice and flat. And now they're ready to go in the oven. Okay, so there they go. I'm gonna put them in for 20 minutes. Okay, so now we're gonna make the frosting. So these are the ingredients we're gonna use for the frosting. So you're gonna add 2 cups of raw cashews into the blender. 1 cup and 1/4 of water. I'm gonna put a few dashes of cinnamon. That's about 4 or 5. 1/4 cup of maple syrup. 1/2 cup of coconut sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt. I just put the top on, now we're gonna blend it. Okay, so the timer went off for 20 minutes. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this in for another 10 minutes, but I'm gonna turn the oven off. So this step is important. Don't forget to do this. It sets the batter and keeps it really moist. Okay, so I just took them out of the oven, and I am now going to take them out of the pans with the parchment paper. So you see how easy that is? It literally just comes right up. Okay, so we're gonna deal with the bottom layer of the cake first, and you wanna turn this upside down so that the top of it is flat. This way, when we're pouring the frosting, it makes it much more easier for us to lay it out. As you can see, my cake is a little warm. You can wait until yours cools down, but I like the texture of my frosting to be a little bit runny so that it runs down the sides of the cake. You can totally make yours a little bit thicker, and if your cake is warm, it'll still be a little bit like runny until it sets while it dries. So here you just see me using a flat spoon to spread it all around, and I'm gonna add a little bit more so that there's enough on the inside layer of the cake. Now let's move on to the next layer of the cake. So as you see me sitting it here on top of the frosting, and now I'm gonna top the top layer with the frosting and let the frosting just run down the sides as you pour more. Now you'll have some frosting left over as well. Okay, so now we're gonna make the topping for the frosting with the walnuts and maple syrup and some spices. So set the broil on low. We're gonna put them in the oven. So I have 3/4 cup of walnuts. And we have 1/3 cup of maple syrup. I'm gonna mix that up. Make sure all of them are all covered with the maple syrup. Then we're gonna put a few dashes of cinnamon, however much you like. And then I'm gonna mix that up. So I lined that pan again, and then I'm gonna pour the mixture on the parchment paper. Then I'm gonna spread that out evenly, and then we're gonna throw this in the oven. Okay, so we're gonna take them out. They're all nice and crispy. So here they are out the oven. Now the maple syrup will start to get pretty sticky, so I am gonna put them on the cake pretty soon. Okay, so I'm just getting the walnuts and the maple syrup with a spoon and dabbing it all over the cake. I like for each bite, or at least each slice of the cake, to have a few walnuts, so I make sure there's a lot. And this is also a great just snacking sweet recipe too, if you just like to have candied walnuts. It just gives you that perfect crunch with each bite or slice of the cake. It's so good. Now we're gonna add some nutmeg and a few sprinkles of cinnamon. And it's all done. That is it, you guys. That is the whole cake. But now for the taste test. Okay, so here's the taste test. I should get a walnut too. It's really, really dense. Okay, you guys, so I have it here. It's kind of a big bite. Oh my gosh. It's so good and so moist. Wow, you guys have to try this. So as you can see from the look on my face, I was so happy that I mastered the actual measurements of my own recipe, because normally I don't measure anything. So in order to give you guys the recipe, I had to make sure that I wrote everything down and tried to measure it piece by piece. So I hope you guys enjoy. Stay tuned for the next recipe. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.